Yes, so thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. Everything's okay right now? I think it is. Let me just check it. Okay, I think right now it is. So, first of all, well, I'm going to talk about a single phenomenon that is when neologism don't reach the dictionary, and I will be talking about occasionalisms in Spanish. First of all, I will be presenting my topic and the objectives of my little research that belongs to a bigger research, my thesis, my doctoral thesis. Then I will be comparing neologisms and occasionalisms, and starting but we have been talking about this before, the lexicographic criterion. Then I will be presenting more characteristics in occasionalisms, and after that I will be talking about the lexicographical work and the dictionarization that we've been talking also just in the previous talk. Then the data and the methodology that I follow with the results and the analysis that I made to arrive to the conclusions. So, when we talk about occasionalisms, are we talking about neology? So yes, one of the first reference that talks about neology is the Matore reference in 1952. And he explained it that there exists this group of neologisms that cannot be considered as neologism themselves. They have these special characteristics, and we should study them well inside the neology group, but with different characteristics. We can see it as well when Gilbert proposed the Neologisme de langue et Neologisme de parole in 1975. Neologisme de langue de Gilbert were related to the creativity of the speaker and some kind of ludicity of these words. Ray, in 1976, he proposed a question about is neologism a pseudo concept? And we can say yes, it is a pseudo concept if we are referring to this kind of special units, but we cannot state that neologism is a pseudo concept. We cannot define it theoretically, but we cannot say that it is a pseudo concept. But what happened later? Algio in 1983, he discovered that there were a lot of words that don't reach the dictionary. He studied the group of a corpus of 3,500 words, and he divided this number of words in 43 different groups, trying to find some patterns and trying to find some common characteristics between them. But for us, it's so important the approach that Hohenhaus did in 2007 when he explained the neology as a process, and not as a process when we have the first occurrence of a word, then it begins a process to end at the dictionary. So what are our objectives for this research? Well, to study and to explain what occasionalisms are, what are the difference with neologisms that occasionalisms have, and well, try to look for some patterns in the formation of these special units. To illustrate this phenomenon, I just put two examples. For example, the first one, neohysteria process, and we start a new neohysteria process. And the second one, which is el deseo no se describe, los poemas sí, y sigue cernudeando, which is, and he keeps cernudating, related to the poet. If we just take these two words by separate, we can maybe get into the meaning of these words, but definitely we need the information in the context in order to know what they really mean, or what the author wanted to say with this by using these two words. Our starting point is the lexicographical criterion, which is our tool to collect all these units. But how do it really work? Well, we have a huge number of neologisms in press, and we call them lexicographical neologisms. We check if these neologisms are in the dictionaries of reference that Andreina just explained, the Diccionario de la Real Academia and Lemma. And if they are not in the dictionaries, then we included this neologism in the database. So we talk about lexicographical neologisms instead of neologisms themselves. But inside this group, this big group of lexicographical neologism, we can find different phenomena. We can find these prototypical neologisms, we can find some terminological units, and we can find, of course, these single-use units that we call occasionalisms, but not just us. In this research, we have tried to answer as well to the question that a lot of units, as Algeo proposed, were the single-use units or APACs in our corpus. But the answer that Stecauer, Lipka, and Hohenhaus give to this question is that, okay, is that this is a process. We have the nonce word, that is the first time that we find a word, or the speaker or hearer find a word. Then this word start a process to the institutionalization, that means being used, and then it can end with the lexicalization, that it means become part of the dictionary. Schmidt in 2008 said, okay, this is not a one-way path. This is a three-way path, and this happens simultaneously from three different perspectives. One socio-pragmatic, another one structural perspective, and the third one, which is cognitive perspective. For us, it was also really, really important and interesting, the approach made by Dahl and Nammer, which said and stated that it wasn't a process. We cannot say that occasionalisms begin a path or begin the process of lexicalization and institutionalization, because the occasionalisms are units created to cover a specific need in a specific context. So they were when they talk about occasionalisms, we cannot state that they begin a process because they just were born for a single use. And we can also tell that when we look for this information in lexicographical work. We have a lot of dictionaries of neologisms really well known by most of us. In Spanish, for example, María Moliner, Manuel Seco, Clave Alvar, and some specific tools such as Omneo, El Antenario, or El Martes Neológico, which is a blog on net. And also we have occasionalisms, dictionaries of occasionalisms, which are completely different to these lexicographical prototypical works. We have, for example, Dictionnaire de mots sauvages, Dictionnaire de mots rares. They are more ludical and they are more creative lexicographical works, more than the prototypical neologism dictionary that we are used to. So, for my research, I choose the Neometro database, which is a database that right now contains more than 3,400 units. And what I did is to take from this database all the words that present just one occurrence, the word APACs, in this database, and I compared to two bigger corpora, Factiva, which is the Dow Jones corpora in press, and Google, which is a macro corpus, and I just checked that they weren't used a lot, and they weren't highly used units, in order to check that they were occasionalisms. In Neometro database, we can have this kind of information. We have basic data about the word and the grammatical category. Then we have context and the country that where they were collected. Also, the linguistic analysis about how the word was formed, and if there were some proper nouns or some neological compounds, or if it was a proper noun before and now it's a common noun. And also for us, extremely important, the usage analysis, which is the how many times it was used, this word in this database, the first time that we can find this word, and the thematic area the word belongs. And for also interesting for us, the relations with other dictionaries. We have, in this case, in all the words of our database, we have looked for and compare with all the dictionary the presence of these units in all the dictionary and two corpora, which are the CREA and the CORPES, provided by Real Academia de la Lengua Española as well. And it's very interesting for us to highlight that the dictionaries that we look for, they belong as well to other languages, such as Catalan, Italian, French, and English. Just to check if the Spanish word in its translation is included in other dictionaries, to have a bigger view of the phenomenon. And what did we find in this research? Well, the results, we have divided them into two groups, two big groups. One of them related to formation processes, and the other one related to rule formation. About formation processes, the first one that I present is the blending. And blending is so common because it's one of the formation processes that belong the speaker to be more creative. In these two examples, I just put, for example, los pantalones de corte pirata y los pantafaldas, and I try to translate it as trouser skirt, which be something, which be the literal translation of that. And then we have as well la posición de Raquel M. Atsuar, bolillo tuber, which is a combination of bolillo and YouTuber. Bolillo is the thing that the woman is making in the picture. It's technical to do some clothes, some decorative clothes. And if you do this on YouTube, then you are a bolillo tuber, which is clearly an occasionalism because it's just Raquel M. Atsuar doing bolillo on YouTube. Then we have compounding, but we cannot say that compounding is productive in occasionalism formation. What we have to say is that the structure inside compounding is what is able to do occasionalism. For example, noun plus noun, when we have two nouns that they are opposite or quite weird to see together, such as the first example in this slide, which is Ed the dishwasher poet, or another structure proposed and common in our corpus, which is verb plus noun, such as asustafuncionarios or cazaurnas, that I try to translate as civil servant busters and ballot box hunters. Another thing that we see some patterns of in our corpus, it's neoclassical compounding with grapher and metro, such as calculographer, or abucheometro, which is a boometer. As we can see, we will see later as well that they kind of transgrade the rule in order to form a transgressive unity. And also, I put this as something related to the formation processes, but we can see that the proper nouns has a lot to see in the formation of occasionalism formation. I wanted to illustrate this with these two examples. Es ahora un GP menos Alonso dependiente related to the Formula One pilot Fernando Alonso, or the other neoclassical compounding formed with Filo and Podemos, which is a Spanish political party. That was related to the formation processes, but we have also some patterns in formation rules, such as F suffix. The F suffix goes normally with an abstract concept, but here we can see it with two really concrete concepts, which are, one of them is the bigotez. I try to translate it as mustachity. And then we have another one, which is the Rafaelez. I still think he has a lot of Rafaelity related to the Spanish singer Rafael. But it was not just the F suffix. AR suffix, as we can see in these two examples. In English, maybe it's too common to verbalize a noun, not that common in Spanish. That we have, for example, in this example, the DJ Alemán, the German DJ, will deep house, and the verb would be something like to deep house. Or the other example that we have to tradition. Tradition in law would be the literal translation. We can see that the rule is being translated. We have the translation of the rule in order to form some occasionalisms, such as "it" suffix, which means an inflammation of some part of your body, not in this example at all, which is the catastrophes, or the "metro" suffix, which is used to form a tool. And in this example, we have the moralisometer, which is also a ludical word in order to separate them for the prototypical neologism. And just to end, we have we've been talking about neoclassical compounding and this kind of new neoclassical compounding about cyber, for example, which is also productive in neology. But what is important for us is the translation of the rule that happens when it forms an occasionalism. In this case, for example, a particular cyber republic. Or the case of macro, which is also interesting in this example for us because we have the macro influencer, which is an occasionalism, and in the same example, we have the micro influencer, which is a widespread neologism. So we can state that macro is more likely to form some occasionalisms more than micro, following the data in our corpus. Just my final conclusions, we can state after doing this research that there are some patterns in occasionalism formation linked to linguistic creativity and productivity. We can also state that occasionalisms are not random linguistic acts. They have a functioning. They have something that we can actually study in order to localize where occasionalisms are or where they are born. We can also say that they fulfill a special need in a given context, and that they do not start the path as neologisms do. Another thing that we have to take into account when we talk about occasionalisms is that the same occasionalism can be created by different speakers. For example, if my situation in my specific given context allows me to create this word with using my language, it's possible that another person in another part of the world using the same language that I'm using can create the same unity, but it doesn't mean that it is not an occasionalism anymore. It means that they have created the same occasionalism. And lexicographically, why they are interested in lexicographically? Because they have their own lexicographical works, they have their own lexicographical space, and they actually have a lot of information about how language works, and also about how language do the anti-language for saying it in some way. Finally, just the latest example is Mileurista. Mileurista was born to answer to this special need that a person that earns around 1,000 euros a month. So there was this person that said, okay, let's call it Mileurista. Mileurista started the path. So it's really important for us to say, to declare where the barrier or where the frontier is, to say this is an occasionalism and this is not, and this is what I try to show to all of you and try to talk also to you and to hear from you what do you think about this. So thank you very much for this, and I hope you like it.
Thank you, Pedro. And thank you for raising another aspect regarding what neologisms are. You were talking about lexicographical neologisms. So it means that there are neologisms which are not lexicographical. And in that case, it's some kind of contradiction with what we were hearing before about the methodology that if it's in a dictionary, it's not a neologism. Maybe we can elaborate discussion on that and on other things. But first of all, we didn't receive any question. Once again, Annette, has prepared the question, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Pedro. I mean, the question that you raised is one that we constantly think about in our own project of recording German neologisms in a dictionary of neologisms. And that is, when do we know that a unit is non-evolutionary, or that they don't start a path, like you said? How do we know? We only know after some time, but it might still be worth recording occasionalisms and then wait and see how they develop, at least in a dictionary specialized on neologisms. So we are trying to find a way to incorporate these units as well, and then monitor them for some time, and then see whether they truly become neologisms or whether they stay limited to certain speakers or certain sources, for example. But it's hard to tell in the beginning whether a word has a chance to develop in that way. And I wonder if you know any criteria. Are there any? If whether you can tell, like, have a look into the future and say this might become used more often or widely spread. It would help us along, really, if there were such criteria.
Unfortunately, I cannot tell you that I have it right now, and I really want to have them, because I'm doing it on my thesis, trying to get these patterns, trying to develop it more consciously. I'm trying to look for this kind of prediction, which is completely difficult, but we are, with the help of Judith, we are trying to get to these patterns or to these prediction tools that maybe it's difficult for us to state that it is a non-evolutionary unit, but maybe we can state, okay, these have a lot of points to be a non-evolutionary unit or to be an occasionalism. And also to consider the occasionalism at one time. Like for example, we have been collecting units from the 2002, 2003 and so, that have been used just one single time. And those are occasionalisms. So we have to study what those occasionalisms have in common in order to say those could be occasionalisms.
Thanks again, Pedro.
Thank you.
We don't have any more questions, or sorry, we do.
There is one in the chat.
Yeah, I don't know who this is. Would you like to just unmute and ask Pedro directly?
Yeah, I can, yeah. So,
okay.
When we talk about, when we compare,
I'm sorry, just a moment. Anna, would you mind just saying your question? I'm not sure if everyone is ready.
Actually, don't speak well English, so I prefer to write it down.
Okay.
Pedro, si me has entendido, la pregunta es esta. Cuando tú señalas una presencia en clave, en DEA o en alguno de estos, siendo ocasionalismos, ¿señala solo que esté la entrada o cabe la posibilidad de que incluso, porque me sorprendería, estuviera esa acepción de significado? Eso es lo que quería saber sobre ese dato. Gracias.
Sí, pues, well, when we have those kind of phenomena happening, we have the semantic neologism. We try to separate them for our objective, because we can state that there exists this that we have called uso ocasional, which would be related to your question, but they won't be occasionalism themselves, because if they have been used and it has a presence in corpora, for example, this one that I put in the example, it has a presence of 6 occurrences in a corpora, it's very difficult for us to state that it is an occasionalism. But we could state, if we have checked it in our database, that it has an uso ocasional, which we are trying to study as well, but it's more difficult. Es bastante más complicado añadir este uso ocasional, this occasional use to the occasionalism itself.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you, Anna. I'm sorry I could only read your question after what I said. So thanks again.